يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي.
I'm not bad. I just have to focus again.
Sure.
I'm not bad, and I was on that path slowly. But Mufti Menk kind of brought it to where it was like, listen, like, you are loved, you can be forgiven, you are being tested. It's not personal, right? You think it's like, okay, it's not personal. It's not because I'm destined
Absolutely not.
to go to hellfire,
No.
right?
No, that's right. This is so interesting because one thing that Allah tells us about the people that are closest to Him, especially if you look at the prophets and the messengers go through the worst of tests. So Allah doesn't make doesn't make your life easy because He loves you. He tests you more when He loves you. So it's not a bad thing to be tested. It's kind of a badge of honor to be the one to be put in that position, so to speak. I don't know if that kind of rings true with you.
Yes, like, I can definitely say reading the Quran and having, Mufti Menk as an inspiration has made me not feel bad about the scars. Let's put it that way. To not feel shame at the scar tissue, as ones would say, right? A sort of warrior who can see all the lashes on them and be like, yeah, I may not be a porcelain doll with the perfect everything, but each scar tells a story. And Islam has made me feel like you don't have to be ashamed of that. You don't have to feel ashamed. You can move forward, onward, right? And keep trying and keep going down that path, and you can get there.
I'm going to ask you a question, and it's like you've more than answered it so far, but I'm just going to put it to you anyway. So despite what's going on in the world and that the common narrative appears to be against Muslims and Islam, you seem to be going against the crowd. Is this something that is part of your rebellious nature, or am I reading this wrong? I'm guessing I'm reading it right.
It's interesting because originally I'm growing up in a culture where there wasn't, like I said, an us versus them. And then when you have Trump saying the Muslim ban in the beginning, because I also do the political side to my degrees, right? And it's like, I would think, well, these, based off of the before, like Mufti Menk, right? It's like, okay, these people, they would say they are backwards, they're not educated, they're stuck in the Stone Age, they're radicals, they attack people far more often than anyone else, they would say, right? And then I started thinking, wait a minute, I read all these books about the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisitions. I've read about the religious wars of countless faiths, the Lutherans and the Protestants, and I was like, wait a minute, there's something else there. And I started realizing, am I judging based off of my media, my controlled corporate media? And then I had a good friend, Ishmael, we call him Ish, and he did a lecture in the college, because the first criticism that people were mad about, and I needed more answers to, was, what is jihad, and why did Muhammad have a 9-year-old wife? Because this is a thing that a lot of Christians and in the communities would say, oh, that's child marriage, that's evil. And then, like, I didn't know anything, and I was like, well, wait a minute, I read that book about Bin Laden, I've read these books, I'm already going through a lot of debunking, I need to go in more. And then slowly there was an unfolding, and I was like, you know what, wait a minute, maybe maybe it's not so bad to be part of this community, right? They're not what I've been told. The biggest thing too was the hijab. Like, we'll get extreme examples of, oh, look at these Boko Haram people who are doing female genital mutilation and forcing women to wear a niqab. No, was it burqa? I think it's the one where you cover everything.
And then, the burqa kind of on its own, it covers everything except for the face, but the niqab is the thing that covers your face as well.
Yeah, the one that covers everything. And so I was like, And then I started thinking about my own culture. Then all of a sudden something turned back because I thought, I'm really tired of having to buy all these clothes and to constantly think about how sexy I look. And I was like, this is kind of a burden. This is a burden. And then the more I would work at night shifts and then have to take the bus home, and how drunk men in the street will catcall, they'll come up to you, and then I started realizing the male gaze. I want that person to go away, and I'm in my uniform for work, and I smell like food, and this person is bothering me. And I started getting more and more tired of the constant sex stimulation within my culture. And I said, like, what can I do? Like, this is just too much. Just too much. And there was times where, not dressing modest, but then slowly getting more modest and more modest and more modest.
Yeah.
And then I was like, maybe Muslim women have a point here. Maybe Islam has a point of dressing modestly and simply, and not being overly flashy because the material items control you, and then I'm wearing all this stuff to get validated by strangers, and then it's also attracting more men to stare at me longer than what I want them to, when I really want them to go away, because sometimes I can be more of an introvert, because in the community where I grew up, most of the time, if you stare at somebody, there can come an altercation. There's usually, what are you looking at? After 3 seconds, right? So I always had this mentality of like, well, I don't like when people stare at me, and I don't want these guys to keep catcalling me. And when I lived in the canal in San Rafael, in those Latino projects, the immigrant zone we call it, there was a lot of heavy catcalling where people would pull over their car as I'm walking to 7-Eleven and just say, hey mommy, and I'm like, just get away, just, oh my gosh.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
It means like mommy is like a chula, like a sexy lady.
Oh, I see.
In Spanish.
Sure.
It's yeah, and so it was very dark, and I was like, there's got to be a better way. I don't want to have to look pretty all the time. And when I had worked in this very fancy fur shop selling like very fancy fur coats, and I always had to dress like, like a little mini model, and I didn't really like it because I was like, this is too much pageantry. I don't want the pageantry. I don't want to be the doll,
Of course.
I don't want it. It's too much pressure. I don't desire it.
Yeah, that's true. What an incredible journey, Milan. Okay, so moving on. So these questions might now seem disjointed, but I'm going to ask you them anyway. So, so being now being a Muslim is not I don't know if you know this already, but being a Muslim is not a nationality.
Now I know that, yes. Because I know this might sound weird, but I've heard of like Asian Muslims, but I thought, oh, that's weird. Like, that's not real. Like way back in the day, I was like, that's not a real thing, because I didn't know. I wasn't educated in that. But then this is gonna sound really weird. When Khabib fought Conor McGregor, okay, all of a sudden there was this, when they fought, it was the first time I was like, oh, a Russian, and then all of a sudden like, well, he's Muslim. And then when he started saying things like Alhamdulillah, I was like, oh, and then I was like, wait a minute, he's a Muslim? Like, this is what? And then I was like, who is this guy? And then I went down the rabbit hole of watching the Dagestan Chronicles about him, and I was like, there's Muslims in Russia?
Yeah.
Like, I was like, wow, it's so amazing how I can have so much knowledge on other things.
Sure.
And not and like other topics, right? We can't know it all.
No, of course.
And then other Habib fans were like, oh, he's so disciplined and has patience and a stoic mindset because of Islam. And I was like, what? So, and like, because we think of the hate preacher in our minds. We think of the radicals, right? We think of all the negative things. It's so strange because our media has like no examples of a good Muslim on the TV.
Yeah.
Only one we ever know is Malcolm X, and he's a touchy topic.
Sure. Right? He's demonized, isn't he? But he until the point when he went to Mecca and had that kind of like a Muslim epiphany kind of things, and that had a kind of huge effect on me when they showed that journey when he went to Hajj and the pilgrimage, and then he wrote the letter back. That really blew me away. It really did that time. But people don't. I don't think people see that side of it. They see the fact that he's saying by any means necessary, white people are devils, this kind of stuff. So you're seeing all of that, but you don't see the switch at the end when he becomes like a global kind of person. He says, he's kind of giving the message that I'm part of the global Islam, so that every nationality is part of the whole kind of thing. You know, it's not just us against them. It's like the poem that Muhammad Ali, he went, when he used to give the lectures at universities, and they said, Muhammad, give us a poem. And he said, me, we. And that was so profound at that time. And I thought, that's so amazing. Just those two words, me, we. And then if you sit and think about that, it's mind-blowing. You know, so I mean, that's again Muhammad Ali, another Muslim. You know, so he's
yes.
And you mentioned about the fact that Habib is down to earth and he's grounded. You mentioned a similar word to that, and
yes,
that is, I would say, from my experience, and it is from the fact that we pray 5 times a day. And what really does it is during Ramadan, and we're fasting and praying 5 times a day. So it's just, and you think, you're fasting? How can you enjoy that? You're suffering. And my friends think, my friends who are not Muslim, and they ask. And I say, look, can I ask you something? Have you ever seen a person who's Muslim fasting during Ramadan and they are miserable? And they say, no. I don't know if you know anybody who's Muslim, by the way. Milan, I think, did you mention?
Yeah, on campus, yeah. On campus.
Yeah. So when you look at them and they're fasting, and once you start getting into it, it's just after the 3rd or 4th day, it's mind-blowing. It really, really is. It's just but then you see that amongst Muslims as well. Then they're not in a state of misery kind of thing, which you'd expect.
No, I can't say I haven't seen in real life any Muslim who's ever been like shouting or mean or belligerent or are miserable. Most of them, on the campus, they're studying, they're quiet. I've never ever been bothered. It's a very different experience with the Muslim community.
It's definitely, I would say, it's definitely the prayer, because that just grounds you it brings you right down and tells you your position. When you're putting your head on the ground, this is what you are. This is what you are. You're not that arrogant person with their nose up in the air. When that nose touches the ground into the dirt, that's you as a human being. So so it has a massive effect. You're doing this in front of your Creator so many times a day. Yes. By the way, do you know what the word Islam means?
Submission.
Submission, right? To the will of the Creator. That is Islam. Yeah. Which do you know that Muslims, we believe in we believe all the prophets were Muslims? Or Adam.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Adam, Abraham, Moses, Noah, Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, all Muslims. But if you look at the meaning of the word Islam, somebody who's Muslim is somebody who practices Islam. Basically, somebody who submits their will to the Creator. So who submits their will to the Creator more than the prophets? Nobody. That is Islam. That is Islam. True. That is Islam. So even the words like Christianity, I'll tell you one thing, the Christians at the time of Jesus didn't know the word Christianity.
No,
but they must have called themselves something.
True.
Yeah. So I mean, that's just a bit of knowledge for your knowledge bank.
Definitely.
Yeah. So Yeah, so we believe all prophets are Muslims. They all submit their will to the Creator. Jesus, when he's in the garden, you studied the Bible, I take it?
Yes.
Yeah. So you know that at one point he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, the day before the crucifixion.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, he says to the disciples, protect me, basically. Because he knew that the Romans were coming for him or trying to find him. But so in the Garden of Gethsemane, they had some kind of, they thought it was some kind of place of, like a sanctuary. So he's a prophet. He goes and prays. He puts his head on the ground. He puts his head on the ground and he says, Father, take this cup away from me, this cup of death, but not my will, but your will. Not my will, but your will. What does that mean? Submitting his will to the will of the Creator. So that kind of tells you that Jesus was a practice. He practices Islam. He practices his faith. You know, and yeah. So I mean, yeah, we kind of digress there a little bit there.
That's okay. Still learning.
Yeah, of course. So what's your view on Islam now and how Muslims are portrayed? Because now you must have come a complete 180 degrees from where you were, let's say 5 years ago. So you had 5 years ago, Muslims, mad guys in caves, shouting out, Allahu Akbar kind of thing.
Exactly, yes.
Now
I feel part of the community. Like I feel involved. Because what's interesting is I bought a sweater after Habib had fought, and then I started watching him more and how dedicated he was to his religion. My mind was blown because I've seen a lot of fake Christianity that's more materialism where they try to sell you. Like there's a guy named Jim Baker who's like an ends of time evangelical. He'll sell you buckets of storage food. Right? There's a lot of scamming in the Christian community that the Christian community has not rooted out, right?
Okay.
And when it came, so I was like, oh, everybody's fake. I thought, and these athletes, they say they love Jesus, but then they go and they whore, they do all these things, they promote fast food, soda, drugs. They do a lot of things that would show that their religion would not approve of. But then when Habib was so strict, I was like, this is the real deal, man. If he can do it, I can do it. And I have Mufti Menk. All these circles are coming together. They're all overlapping, right? And then I was like, wow, this is different. So like I bought a sweater, and then it had Alhamdulillah, but English, not the Arabic writing, but the writing looked sort of like Arabic.
Right.
And I wore it to class, and one of the classmates came up to me and started harassing me, you know. And the sweater was black and the letters were white, so she kind of thought it looked like the ISIS flag, right? She was very ignorant. Okay. And she started saying things to me, and I yelled at her. It's the first time I ever yelled in class. But I was like, get away from me. Go away. You know? And as I walked, I was in the ceramics lab. It's like where you make pottery. Mm-hmm. So it was a big building. And as I was walking, she was still behind me. And I was like, wow, imagine what this must be like for somebody who's fully Muslim in their garb.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just a regular person who is learning, dipping their toes into Islam, and look at the harassment I'm getting. And I'm not brown, and so imagine. And I was like, wow, this is like an awakening, right? And then in class, especially in like my political science classes, some people were like, some people will say, oh well, Obama, he's too sympathetic with Muslims. He's going to bring Sharia law here. We're a Christian nation. But most of these people didn't study the founding fathers, right?
Sure.
And then I found myself defending Muslims in class, which was interesting because a lot of people will be like, oh, I'll defend them because we're not bigots. But I had this inner feeling of connection.
Right.
Like they were talking about a family member.
Okay.
It's like a faceless, like I wasn't just, I was defending one person. No, it was, hey man, but can't we say this about X religion or this religion or that religion? Come on, man. We don't really got to single out just Muslims.
Sure.
But I was talking to them who could have been my former self, right?
Yeah, of course.
They're in that mindset of what I used to be. So I knew how to talk to them and say like, hey man, I know not all the Muslims are telling all these dark things, man. Just check out this guy, Mufti Menk. Look at this athlete, Habib, he's different, man. These people, we're not shown everything. And then it started becoming more connected. And then when I started reading the Quran and I saw how much hate I was getting from the alt-right neo-Nazis and from other Christians, they're like, that book's satanic. I was like, you gotta be joking. You're calling the Quran satanic. You're insane. Like, you stop it, you know? And then, they want Sharia law here. I want my freedom. And I was like, no one's trying to take away your freedom. Man, I was born in this community. I know what you're thinking. You're wrong. So it's like, it's totally changed my outlook.
It's true. But I've just come across this ayat in the Quran, which you've not come across yet because it's Surah 29. But talk about disjointed. But anyway, do the people think they will be left to say we believe and they will not be tried? You know, Allah keeps on reminding us that it's not enough. Obviously, we have to pray. Obviously, we have to fast. Obviously, you know, we have to do all these things. These are the things that bring us connection to our Creator, and they bring us close to our Creator. But if we think we're not going to be tried in all of that, then we're living in a fool's paradise kind of thing.
Oh yes, and I feel like now that I'm getting more involved with the Quran and everything like that, I definitely see tests. I definitely see them. There has to be a test to see if I'm really changed, right? Because I was like, I feel this love, I feel this connection, I feel this deep bond and admiration for Mufti Menk and Habib. This has got to be a sign, because I've heard countless sermons from in Christianity. I've never felt like I want to follow this person. I want to see what else they have to say. Usually, it's like I'm looking at my wrist watch and I'm like, "Okay, is this almost over?
Okay.
I want to go home now." But it's totally different. So the connection there and the tests are definitely there, especially when it comes to sin.
Sure.
It really does. I had an interesting thing though. Is one way in which I know I've been tested is how many times I get invited to do activities that are actually really sinful.
Sure.
And
of course.
I have a strength now to be like, no. And my lustfulness is greatly decreased. It's greatly decreased. I still make comedy jokes.
Sure.
But that's not the same as like desire. Right. I'm saying my desire, my gaze, how Muslims say lower your gaze.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Be respectful. Don't be lustful and too clingy.
Yeah.
I've really felt that. Like now, if somebody really handsome, comes into my section at work or something, I feel like I'm getting indifferent. Like it doesn't matter. It's just like, hey, what do they want? How can I help them?
This is a strength that comes by connecting to your Creator more and more and more. And the way you are, I would say, obviously as a Muslim who believes in Allah, but the more you go deeper into the Quran, it's you are connecting to your Creator, and you're doing it on what seems to me like 5-6 times a week. You're connecting. I mean, it's like you won't find Muslims who are reading the Quran that much. I'm telling you, you'll not find Muslims who are reading the Quran that much. Can I just read another ayat of the Quran, which is the ayat straight after?
Totally.
And it's about trying. It's about being tried. But we have certainly tried those before them, and Allah will surely make evident those who are truthful, and He will surely make evident the liars. So He makes the truth stand out clear. Basically, that's what it means. So it's again, you see this theme repeated again and again in the Quran, where Allah is making the truth and falsehood like a clear distinction between the two of them. And you are on I think Surah Araf now, which is the 7th surah. Very interesting.
And because of Islam and how it's made me feel more free as a woman, where I'm like, oh, I don't need to depend on the validation of these gazes that my community is putting on me. And if, to adorn yourself with the hijab, it started to change my way of it. And then I see what the women go through, like if they come to the restaurant to eat. I've heard some of my male staff coworkers say like, oh, I bet she has a bomb strapped to her chest. like they say terrible things, and I'm like, okay, I gotta be able to know how to explain what I like about Islam to them, and I need to, make sure I understand, and I like this faith and it's working for me, and it's not what we've been taught. And yes, it's a wonderful faith that has really touched me. I feel like I'm on a journey where I'm walking, down a path, and God is there, and he's like, okay, there's a slow path, there's obstacles. I don't know if you ever heard of the story of the tortoise and the hare, the rabbit who went fast and then the turtle who went slow, but the turtle ended up winning. That's how I feel. Yeah, I feel like I'm the turtle. Like I'm meant to go slow and really understand, because otherwise my friends who are watching me, and a lot of them have they'll make jokes like, oh, when you talk about how Islam has changed you and how you don't like porn, I thought about the last porn film that I just watched. And I was like, come on, man, don't say that. Like, I have to be able to explain myself to them and fully understand. And, I want to, because I do want to stop the young girls from getting into the pimp, hood rat culture, the gang culture. It's destroying people. And the drug, now in America, we have a presidential candidate saying to legalize all drugs, right? And as somebody who's grown up with parents and families who have been ravaged by drugs, right? The sort of the way my country is going is really worrying me. So, and then I see the Christian community is not really doing anything about it, or they're not really speaking out. Christians don't see it as their duty that much anymore. They're just saying, oh, whatever, it's very casual now. But with Islam, it makes me feel like, no, this isn't normal. This isn't good. Allah he's taking off these these binds, that these chains of sin, I guess you could say. You start to feel lighter.
So interesting. You should put it that way, because when black magic is done upon somebody in a similar way, the black magic is in a negatively spiritual way. The binds are put on a person and it goes round and round and round. And when the magic is removed, the binds are removed in the opposite direction, and they start coming off. And it's strange how you should put that across, that the binds are coming off. That's amazing. It's amazing how you should see it that way.
And I only realized how heavy they were until you started having them taken off.
Yes.
Right? It's amazing, because when I used to be working, and I would work with these Saint of Death cult worshippers, right? A lot of those women, they're very, very sex oriented, and then they tell you little things in your ear, right?
Right.
Oh, look at that guy. But they say these really dirty things, and then I think, oh, this is normal, because I don't have any positive women around to be like, no, that's not normal. This woman is trash. Get away from her. But they have these moments where they can whisper these spider webs in your ear, sort of. And then when and then you have your TV, you have these women who just do like Cardi B and Nicki Minaj, and it's all sex. And then you see the men, and they're like, okay, well, we're interested in having a bunch of whores. We're not interested in having one wife or two good wives. We're interested in Tinder hookups, right? The hookup culture. So it's like I got all this stuff around me confusing me, but the rock that I can go back to now, that I'm not going to let go of, is Islam, and Mufti Menk and Habib. Those are people will say, why do you focusing on those people? And it's because they're the ones who've been able to penetrate, and that could only be done with some divine intervention.
Sure.
Right?
So basically, I think I mentioned it already, but if you were to see Jesus walking down the street, you would see a Palestinian man with a black beard. He's circumcised. When he dresses in a long white robe. When he eats, he doesn't eat pork. He eats kosher. And even in the Bible, it mentions something about wine being a mocker. It's an abomination, and it's, so you wouldn't imagine Jesus drinking if the Bible is mentioning these things about it. And so there's that. And then when he prays, like I mentioned in the Garden of Gethsemane, he puts his head on the ground, and he fasts. And all these things, if you were to see him just walking down the street, the first thing, I'm sure, I think we discussed this before, but the first thing, a religion you would imagine that person to be, Jesus to be, was a Muslim. Was a Muslim. I don't know how you do you remember?
Yes, I don't think he would be blonde hair and blue eyed as the Mormons and Christians depict him. And yes, and then I made the joke where they might think he's a hipster from San Francisco. Just kidding, because but that's just a funny joke. But yes, he would definitely come off more as what we would say the Middle Eastern archetype than somebody who would be the very fluorescently pale interpretation in the Western sense.
Absolutely. So just to conclude, Milan, I am privileged to speak to many people by the grace of Allah, alhamdulillah. There are a few occasions when I meet someone and I'm truly touched, and this is one of those occasions. And
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why it took me like 6 weeks to get through to you, get a contact number from you and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yes.
Once the video is done, I will send you a link. Can you send us the link to this, please?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
No worries. Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي